What's the crack, folks? It's Nathan here, aka the Rambling Kern, and head instructor of Kern School of Combat. So before I get into today's video, I have recently started getting more active with my Patreon. I'm putting up weekly technique videos on stick fighting and various different aspects of it. So if that's something that interests you, you can sign up to that. It's basically cost of a cup of coffee. And you can chat with me directly there and discuss technique and get feedback, all that sort of stuff. If it interests you, super. If not, please give us a like and subscribe. Anyway, now that that's over, I wanted to discuss a little bit about self-defense. So I have done martial arts for many, many years now. I've done a huge range of different martial arts, self-defense based arts. I've done combat sports. I've done traditional martial arts, all different things. I tend to try out new arts as much as I can, and visit different gyms and try out basically as much as I can to get a good feel of different things and see what I like. I have done, grappling. I've done striking. I've done various different unarmed arts. I've done knife fighting, stick fighting, fencing, all different things, as well as kind of more, less combat focused arts, let's say. I've done capoeira and a few other arts like that for a few years as well, all of which have had great fun, all of which have their own uses and attributes. But recently, Rokas over at Martial Arts Journey has put out his most recent edition of the Self-Defense Championship, which I think is a really fascinating and great little project. Basically taking different martial artists with different backgrounds and putting them through a gauntlet of various different tests to see how they fare in a self-defense based situation. All different situations. Highly recommend you go have a look at it. I'll link it down in the description. Really, really great series. Also, a big shout out to Craig. They're just a regular guy. It's really cool seeing a comparison of professional martial artists with just a regular dude. But a lot of really interesting points have been raised by it, and I think this year has really knocked it out of the park with some of the topics that he's been putting in place around self-defense. And I just kind of want to discuss it because I have a lot of people ask me about self-defense and my opinions on it, and I've had a lot of people come to me wishing to learn different things around self-defense over the years. And it's a topic that I don't really talk about much. I don't really teach a lot for various different reasons, and I kind of want to discuss that. Mainly, I think the main thing I want to discuss around self-defense and self-defense based systems and arts and whatnot is that I feel a lot of them are basically just lying to you. I think a lot of them are money grabs, and a lot of them are teaching false techniques that give you a false sense of security. And I see so many different arguments come up around martial arts and self-defense scenarios, for want of a better word. And I think so many people get it wrong. Not even I know. I've discussed this stuff with people far more knowledgeable than me, and I think a lot of what they have to say is kind of reflected in my opinions on the stuff. So basically, I wanted to kind of touch on some areas around this, and probably one of the first things I wanted to say is that a lot of what you're going to get sold for self-defense stuff out there is really just not good. It's not useful. There is no shortcut to learning self-defense. And I've seen a lot of people discuss this. If you want to get good at fighting, you need to fight. You need to learn to fight. It doesn't matter what art you pick, but if you want to get good at self-defense, you're going to kind of need to do three things. You're going to need to learn how to strike. So you're going to need boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, whatever your preferred art is, but you need one that spars regularly, and I'll touch on sparring in a minute. You're going to need a grappling art. This is arguably the most important, and I'm going to say that it is the most important, but not for the reason you think, and I'll come back to that as well. And number three, you need some sort of weapon-based art. You need familiarity with weapons, and not just in a self-defense capacity of how to deal with someone coming at you with a weapon, how to get it off of them, but also overcoming the fear of actually hitting someone with a weapon. Heaven forbid no one will ever have to be in that situation in their life. But it is a very strange thing, and I've seen this teaching people how to fight with weapons for years, where a lot of people get very hesitant and very uncomfortable having to swing a weapon at someone else, and I totally understand that, because it is a very, very strange thing to do. So, to come back to the points I was saying earlier, with striking arts, you need ones that spar regularly, But sparring is not a fight. And I think that is a very important thing. The adrenaline dump you get in and around competing, I think, is somewhat close, but it's still not a fight. There's a lot of things that happen in fights that you cannot train for, you cannot be prepared for. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes people make when discussing self-defense, because it's so much of a what if, what about sort of conversation. I think so much of it is just wrong. The whole argument of like, oh, you can't do X, Y, or Z in a multiple, opponent scenario. If you're in a multiple opponent scenario, you're screwed. That's it. Like, if I was to fight multiple people, I'm in a really bad spot. Like, I'm in a really bad way, and I'm going to get hurt. Even if I way outclass them in skill and size, I'm in a really bad place. And also, and this is an important note that really just doesn't get addressed when it comes to people discussing self-defense, or if it does, it rarely gets discussed. When you look at self-defense, most of the times you're going to be attacked, it's not a one-on-one confrontation. It's not a sparring match. So it's not a we square up, we agree to some rules, and we swing at each other. That might happen, but generally if you're going to get mugged, someone's going to come up behind you and try to rob something off of you or hit you unexpectedly. Even in a bar, someone might come up and hit you over the head with something. You're not generally going to be aware of the thing that's happening before it happens. If you are aware of it, one of the best self-defense skills you can learn, which again Rokas touched on this in this series, is de-escalating, talking to someone, even if it just means like taking the hit to your ego and being like, someone shouting at you, calling you ugly or you look terrible or whatever. You go, oh, sorry man, like, I've had a tough day, haven't really put the effort into my looks, like, sorry, yeah, I'll go do that, thanks, and walk off. You can de-escalate stuff without having to meet violence with violence. It's the easiest way to get out of stuff. It doesn't mean you're less of a man or whatever. You are avoiding the scenario, and that's one of the easiest ways to not have to be in a fight, is to avoid it. And again, I see this conversation of, well, you just run away. I love that one. I'm like, oh, you just run away. And I totally agree. I've also done parkour for years. I know how to climb over walls and do all that sort of shit to get away from stuff. I totally agree. But that's not always an option. Again, in the series, they touch on that. If you're, say, out in a bar with a drunk friend who's being a nuisance, they might start something and you can't just run off and leave your friend there to get their headbutt in. You can't do that. Well, maybe you will, but I wouldn't. You need to get your friend out of there and deal with the situation. So there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't get touched on when it comes to self-defense. And one of the things to circle back to again that I discussed about grappling, in my opinion, is the most important art you will learn overall when it comes to self-defense, and not for the reason you think. It's not for grappling another person. That is incredibly important. That's a hill I will die on. It is incredibly important to know. But the reason why I bring it up is because the number one thing that I have seen people use in self-defense scenarios, and not the type you would think of, and arguably the most important skill, I know off the top of my head at least 3 or 4 people who have saved their lives purely through knowing this skill. And I will say it is the most important thing you'll learn, and it is how to break fall, how to land when you fall over. People want to learn all these cool techniques and how to beat someone up. If you don't know how to fall safely on the ground, you're very unlikely, if you live in a good neighborhood and in a safe part of the world, you're very unlikely to get hit by anyone randomly in the street. You're very likely to land on the ground and get hit by the earth. That is just something that inevitably will happen to everyone, especially as you get older. If you know how to break fall properly and keep yourself safe, that is the number one skill I could advise anyone to learn. And in fact, I do know places that have started teaching those skills to older people to help them avoid taking nasty falls. I really can't stress how important that skill is. If I could stress any self-defense skill, that would probably be top of my list. The second thing that I've only seen brought up by a handful of people, which I think is realistically the main reason why you should do martial arts and why martial arts is so important, at least to me, because this is something that I rarely see touched on, but it is hugely important, It's that the most likely thing to kill you, it's in there. It's your heart and your lungs. They're the most likely thing to kill you. So if your fitness is bad, you're going to be in trouble. So the most important self-defense skill you can have is to be fit, is to stay in shape. You know, I'm quite a tall guy. I'm almost 6.5 foot tall. Being tall and having some size on you is going to prevent a lot of fights happening. It might encourage some, but even if you're a shorter person, if you have some muscle on your body, generally people will go, maybe I don't want to pick on that guy. Maybe I'll pick on the weaker person instead. It makes you less of a target. Outside of that, your health is going to be in better condition and less likely to collapse from a heart attack or, various different respiratory diseases. Having a good level of fitness is far more important than anything else you can do. I really can't stress that enough. So learning to break full and keeping your fitness in check, probably the most important things you can do. And when it comes to actual fights, if you are fit, it will really put you above everyone else. Because cardio is really completely underestimated as to how important it is in a fight, especially in a self-defense scenario where your adrenaline gets up, you get that adrenaline dump and your heart rate is just going crazy. It is very, very difficult to keep yourself level-headed and to keep going. Often the person who has the ability to keep going will generally do better. So really, really important things to consider when we actually talk about self-defense. Now, why do I bring this stuff up? Because again, like I said, a lot of people have come to me over the years asking me my opinions around self-defense and my thoughts about it, especially with the stuff that I teaching weapons, and especially teaching a art that is predominantly based around using a walking stick. Obviously, as you get older, your ability to move, to stay fit and so on is going to be limited, but arguably the things I discussed, learning how to fall safely and keeping a deep base level of good fitness, is arguably more important to do as you get older than it is when you're younger. But obviously, best time to start was a week ago. Second best time to start is now. So keep those things in mind when you discuss self-defense. Now, going back to what I mentioned about sparring isn't a fight. A lot of people will create these strange sparring scenarios, but ultimately, if you know how to fight, regardless of the rule set you use, you're going to do better than someone else. Obviously, the rule sets will limit your ability to, train in a realistic manner. So certain things you can do, certain steps you can take will make you far more aware and ready to deal with those scenarios. So simple things, if you're a grappler, throw in some strikes. Learn how to deal with strikes. A good grappler will beat most people, but if they don't know how to deal with strikes, they're going to have a bad time. Vice versa for a striker. If you've let's say you do boxing, you've never done any sort of kicking or grappling, go learn a bit of that. Mix that in with what you do. It will really improve what you do and you'll understand those things and be able to deal with it. Throw in some weapons every now and then. Throw in a rubber knife, throw in a training knife, throw in a padded stick. Get used to using those things and seeing what happens. Obviously, the things you need to be most aware of are, beware of your environment. One bit of advice I've given to people in the past when it comes to self-defense, one thing that people really don't even consider, one of the most important things you can do is obviously not be in a bad place. And I mean that both within your life and within an actual environment. Obviously, if you're walking through a bad neighborhood in a city, you are at risk of potentially being attacked. But also, if you have a decent job and aren't living in a bad part of the city, you're less likely to be attacked again. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rule, but these are things to consider. Self-defense skills that people don't even talk about. And again, that was brought up in this series that I really, really love. Being aware of the law. This is something I see brought up constantly when I discuss self-defense and martial arts in general on this channel. Is people discussing arts with their country's mindset first and foremost. Obviously, I have a lot of American viewers. You guys have very, very different legal ramifications around self-defense than what we have in Ireland. You also have the ever-present issue of firearms, something that we really don't have here. And obviously, state by state, those laws change. In Ireland, we basically can't carry any form of weapon, regardless of what it is. So if you are to use one or carry one with you, you have to have a very good reason to have it. And obviously the level of force you use, etc., will put you in various different predicaments. Again, I'm not a legal professional, but if you are going to be serious about learning and training and being aware of self-defense, these are things you need to be aware of. Unquestionable. So if these aren't things you're considering when you're talking about self-defense, I think you need to go back and look at those things, because they are really the underlying basics of everything that have far more impact on your safety than anything else. Now, obviously, this is a bit of a exception from my usual videos, but a lot of really interesting topics were brought up by this series. Big shout out to Rokas and the work that he's done. I actually did a podcast with him years ago when he was in Dublin. I could re-release it on his channel if people are interested. Really, really lovely guy. He comes from an Aikido background, used to run a full-time Aikido club, tried it in a MMA club, realised what he was doing wasn't really effective, and kind of changed his whole outlook on martial arts going forward. And the stuff that he runs on YouTube and the projects that he runs, such as the Self-Defense Championships, I just think are fantastic. So big shout out to him. Go have a look at his work. I really, really highly recommend it. Obviously, if you guys are interested in classes and in what I do, and get in touch. I'd be delighted to help you out and teach you some Irish martial arts. Obviously, if you want to discuss self-defense or the arts that I teach, you will find the Patreon down in the description. We have a Discord where we chat about these things too. And once again, just a huge thank you to everyone for watching. Let me know your thoughts. I know self-defense is a very big and opinionated topic, so I'd love to hear what you guys have to think on it. Obviously, everyone's going to have their own things to say, but these are things I wanted to bring up. And big shout out to my viewers who take the time to engage and discuss these things, because it gives me more room to discuss these topics with you guys, and obviously bring you the sort of things that you want to see. I have some really fun projects in the work this week, which you guys should hopefully see in the coming weeks. So big thank you to everyone. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Huge thank you. Just thank you all so much for watching, and slán.